The mansion on the hill looked perfect from the outside, its white walls glowing under the morning sun, its gardens filled with roses and trimmed hedges. But inside, silence weighed heavy, because perfection didn't live there. The millionaire's only son, Adrian, had been blind since birth. To the world, he had everything: wealth, comfort, privilege. But he had never seen his father's face, his mother's smile, or even the blue sky. People whispered that all the money in the world couldn't buy him sight, and it broke his father's pride in ways no one dared mention. Servants came and went, doctors tried and failed, and the boy's life became a rhythm of darkness. Yet none of them knew that the day an ordinary maid arrived, life in that mansion would change forever. And it would change in a way that no science, no money, and no logic could ever explain. Adrian's father, Mr. Carlisle, was a man feared in business, but helpless in front of his son's condition. Doctors had assured him that blindness was permanent, and he had stopped hoping years ago. But Adrian himself never grew bitter. At 16, he had learned to walk confidently by memory, to play the piano by touch, to smile even when he didn't see the faces smiling back. Still, every night, when the lights dimmed in the house, he whispered a single prayer: "God, just one glimpse. Just once, let me see." The maid who entered the Carlisle mansion one rainy morning was unlike the others. Her name was Grace, a tall black woman in her early 30s, carrying strength in her walk and softness in her voice. She wasn't just there to dust shelves or polish silver. Life had taught her deeper lessons. Grace had grown up in hardship, raised by her grandmother, who was known in her small village for healing remedies and prayers. Grace herself didn't believe she had inherited anything special. But there were moments in her life when she felt something stirring in her hands, like warmth that wanted to pour into others. From the moment she met Adrian, she treated him differently. Where others pitied him, she spoke to him with confidence. Where others guided his hand, she let him try on his own. And in Adrian's dark world, her voice became a light. He would sit in the grand kitchen while she worked, listening to her hum old gospel songs, or tell stories of her childhood where faith was all they had. He told her once, almost shyly, "When you speak, I feel like I can almost see." Grace paused, then touched his shoulder and said, "Maybe one day, Adrian, you will." One evening, while Adrian was struggling with a headache that made his blindness even more unbearable, Grace came into his room quietly. She saw him rubbing his eyes with frustration, muttering, "I hate this darkness." Without thinking, she knelt by his bed, held his face gently, and whispered a prayer her grandmother used to say: "Lord, place light where there is none." Then, with trembling hands, she rubbed his closed eyelids softly, as if wiping away something invisible. Adrian didn't expect anything. He had learned not to. But as she lifted her hands away, something impossible happened. A spark. A glimmer of brightness where there had always been black. He gasped, grabbing her wrist. "Grace, wait, I saw something." Tears filled his sightless eyes as he blinked rapidly, trying to catch that fleeting light again. Grace froze, her heart pounding. She had never felt such heat in her palms before. She pressed her hands over his eyes once more, whispering through her own tears. This time, Adrian screamed, not in pain, but in shock, because the darkness had cracked open, shapes, shadows. The outline of Grace's face. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't complete, but it was vision. For the first time in his life, he could see. Adrian's cries brought the whole household rushing in. His father, stern and skeptical, saw his son pointing, describing Grace's face with trembling awe. Her skin, it's dark. Her eyes, they're shining. Mr. Carlisle staggered, speechless, while his wife collapsed into sobs of disbelief. Doctors were called immediately, But none of their explanations could match the miracle unfolding before them. Adrian's vision wasn't full yet, but it was growing clearer every day that Grace placed her hands over his eyes. At first, Mr. Carlisle struggled with it. He didn't believe in miracles, let alone that a maid could do what millions of dollars in medical care could not. But day after day, as his son learned colors, shapes, and light, the truth pressed harder against his pride. Grace herself never claimed the power. "It's not me," she told them firmly. "It's faith. It's love. It's something bigger than us." Yet the bond between her and Adrian became unshakable. He clung to her not as a servant, but as the one who had given him what the world had denied. The journey wasn't without challenges. Some whispered that Grace was practicing witchcraft, that what she had done couldn't be holy. Others in the Carla's wealthy circle looked at her skin and her humble background and refused to believe she was anything but a lucky accident. The family faced criticism, rumors, and even threats from people who demanded to know the secret. But through it all, Grace never wavered. She continued to serve quietly, to guide Adrian patiently, and to remind him that sight was not just a gift, it was a responsibility. Weeks passed, and Adrian's vision sharpened. He learned to walk through the gardens, and finally saw the roses he had only smelled before. He saw his mother's tears, his father's wary but softened face, and the sunrise over the mansion that he once only imagined. But what struck him most wasn't the beauty of wealth or privilege. It was Grace's tired hands, scarred from years of work, which had given him this miracle. One night, Adrian told his father, "You always thought money could buy everything. But Grace gave me the one thing your money couldn't. She gave me light." Mr. Carlisle lowered his head for the first time in his son's presence, humbled not by loss, but by love. The impossible had happened, not because of wealth, not because of science, but because of faith, compassion, and courage. And as Adrian walked hand in hand with Grace, seeing the world for the first time, the message was clear. Sometimes miracles come from the hands society values the least. But those hands can change everything.